Good morning. My name is Chris Lennon, and I'm a member of the Music and Worship Committee. My pronouns are he, him, and his. Welcome to our virtual service here at First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church here in Plymouth. This service will be posted on our Facebook page as well as on YouTube. The recording will end before we begin our candles of joy and concern. This morning, our service is led by Sandi Hammond and Nicolette Chasse. Sandi joined First Parish as music director and moved to 4 years ago and moved to Plymouth a few years prior. She is the founder of the second all-transgender choir in the country, the Butterfly Music Transgender Chorus, has been accepted to a master's degree program in music therapy at Lesley University. Sandi teaches private lessons in voice, piano, and songwriting. She's an immensely talented woman. I'm editorializing here at the end. And if you have been a member of First Parish, if you were 4 years ago, you'll remember how small the choir was when Sandi first took over, and how probably 4 times the size today. Nicolette is a new member at First Parish of Plymouth. She moved to Plymouth to work as an assistant district attorney in Plymouth County in September and started attending services in December. When she's not working, she enjoys reading just about anything she can get her hands on and staying up to date on politics and foreign affairs and crafting. It's fun reading these little blurbs to get us started, to introduce all the people who are leading the services. And I think there's a lot of human resources people out there that were jealous of what I get to be reading here. Our minister, Art Lavoie, will be back in the pulpit next week to lead a pet ceremony. We hope you will stay after the service for coffee and conversations. Whoever you are, whoever you love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. Come walk with us this hour.
This morning's call to worship is a poem by Maya Angelou called Equality. You declare you see me dimly through a glass which will not shine. Though I stand before you boldly, trim in rank and marking time. You do own to hear me faintly as a whisper out of range, while my drums beat out the message and the rhythm never change. Equality, and I will be free. Equality, and I will be free. You announce my ways are wanton, that I fly from man to man. But if I'm just a shadow to you, could you ever understand? We have lived a painful history. We know the shameful past, but I keep on marching forward and you keep on coming last. Equality, and I will be free. Equality, and I will be free. Take the blinders from your vision, take the padding from your ears, and confess you've heard me crying and admit you've seen my tears. Hear the tempo so compelling. Hear the blood throb in my veins. Yes, my drums are beating nightly, and the rhythms never change. Equality, and I will be free. Equality, and I will be free.
You gotta do when the Spirit says do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do. Oh Lord, you gotta do when the Spirit says do. Spirit says do, 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 Spirit says do. You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you gotta sing, oh Lord, you gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. Spirit says sing, 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 Spirit says sing. You gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. You gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you gotta shout, oh Lord, you gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. Spirit says shout, 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 Spirit says shout.
Okay, could everyone please join me in reciting the chalice lighting? Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, to speak the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning, everyone. When I was asked if I would be interested in co-leading a service this summer, once I got over the initial shock and surprise, because wow, I'm so flattered considering I've been here for 8 months. Linda, are you really sure that this was a good idea? I started wondering what I could talk about. My thoughts drifted to the new civil rights movement we seem to be living through. I thought, perhaps to no one's surprise, of justice. I also thought of healing. Appropriate, perhaps, given that we're living in the midst of a pandemic. Shortly after I had been asked to give a sermon this summer, I participated in one of the many Black Lives Matter protests occurring around the country. I, some friends, and thousands of people donned masks and risked our lives in the middle of a pandemic so that we could stand together as a community and demand justice, demand change. Being out there in that crowd of people, chanting the names of those who were victims of systemic racism, violence, and bigotry was a simultaneously heartbreaking, terrifying, yet awe-inspiring moment. It was late May. The peak of the first wave of COVID had just crested in Massachusetts. When I was at that protest, I was filled with fear. Fear of COVID, fear of police violence, for my fellow protesters, for my friends of color, and all people of color who are subject to discrimination and violence every single day. I left the protest early, as it was a long drive back to Plymouth. When I left, though, I saw the police lining up in their riot gear in the parking garage where I had parked for the day. I started frantically texting my friends to get out because the police were coming and they were dressed like they were going to war. My friends and I and our fellow protesters had shown up in masks and plain black t-shirts. Violence ended up erupting in the streets of Boston that night. The racial injustice we have seen is not only visible in police violence. There are children still locked in cages, not getting proper medical treatment or even basic amenities along the border. The number of Black farmers in America is slowly decreasing due to both overt and systemic racism in our institutions. The mortality rate for Black mothers remains the highest of any demographic in the United States. 3 in 5 Indigenous women are victims of sexual assault. In times as uncertain as these, when we are witness to gross human rights violations, inequity, and justice, when we live with fear and uncertainty, it is easy to fall back and do nothing, to wring our hands and say, but what can I do? I'm one person. But as Unitarian Universalists, we hold a covenant with each other and with our world. We believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We believe in justice, equity, compassion in human relations. We believe in the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process. We believe in the goal of world community with the inalienable rights of peace, liberty, and justice for all. How do we practice that? How do we make our praxis intersect with our principles? Our aim, as members of First Parish and citizens of this world, is to do good. Justice requires action, even when it is painful and scary. Justice in this context is also healing. In seeking justice, protesters, activists, and allies alike are seeking a healing of our society. It is our obligation to use the cause of justice to heal the deep rifts that linger in our society. It is only when we address the existence and pain of anti-Blackness, xenophobia, racism, and other social ills that we can repair the damage these inequities have wrought on our society, and we can finally heal and move forward. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Our obligation is to not stand aside and do nothing. We can and must act to make our world a better place. How can we do this? The methods that we take to seek that justice and healing will not be the same for everyone. Some of us will have the ability to take to the streets and march. Others will be able to dedicate their time to volunteering. Still more will be able to dedicate their treasure, supporting the end of racial injustice financially. Some will teach others. And still, some will begin with the hardest challenge of all, teaching themselves and unlearning the deep prejudices that exist in our society and within ourselves. It will not be easy. It will even be uncomfortable or painful at times. But much like a doctor lances a wound to drain the infection that's grown there, the short-term discomfort and pain are necessary to promote long-term healing. I believe we can heal. We have seen amazing strides in just the past few months, made possible by people who demand justice and healing with every breath. But it cannot be the work of a few. We must work together to fight for justice and healing. One person cannot do this alone. It is only when our community comes together and is united in its aims that we will be able to heal completely.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Those of you who know me as music director know that one of my favorite questions to ask people is, do you sing? And then, of course, my next question is, maybe you should join the choir. So anyway, that was Nicolette, and it was just such a delight to, like, the answer was yes, she sings. So you didn't know that, did you? Since March, we have lived the shared experience of a world pandemic. The initial devastating news, particularly out of New York and Italy, the gyrations of our federal government in response, and the rapid adjustment of shifting socializing from in-person to online. Here at First Parish, we've heard tales of triumph, among them Jan and Jean's lovely reflections of time in nature, and Michelle's battle against the illness itself. My father, sadly, lost his baby brother to COVID-19 on April 29th. As choir director, I felt a responsibility to keep singers connected to one another. Our Zoom ear training classes felt like a paltry substitute to the visceral, communal act of singing together in harmony. But at least we could visit. For myself, my experiences with COVID have been similar to others. After the initial shock, the onslaught of stories full of vivid images like freezer trucks lining the streets next to hospital morgues. Adapting my 2 jobs to working from home, soon I adjusted to a routine of relative peace and what I call COVID resilience, meditation, exercise, Tai Chi classes over Zoom, cooking elaborate recipes, online visits with friends, and backyard visits with family. The advent of summer brought a profound feeling of connection to the outdoors. My yard is rich with bunny rabbits, chipmunks, bird song, butterflies, perennial flower beds, the neighborhood fox, wild turkeys, and the very expressive rooster 2 doors down who politely waits until 9:30 a.m. to let the neighborhood know he is up and has things to say. I've had peaceful sunset swims at Morton Pond, morning bike rides past horse farms, evening beach strolls, and ventures to nearby fields to cut wildflowers for my kitchen table. I've been able to form around me what I now call my bubble of privilege. That burst open on Thursday, May 28th, when I watched the 8.5-minute video of George Floyd's murder, which had taken place 3 days prior. I had certainly been following the news about other horrific murders of people of color, and I had vaguely, without really listening, I am embarrassed to say, followed public health data showing a disproportionate COVID-19 burden on minorities. But on May 28th, sitting on my garden patio, this murder scene sailed across my lawn like an arrow into my heart. I wept. I put down my laptop and I looked around me. How could I reconcile the peaceful beauty of my garden with this gruesome violence? Fictionalized television shows us violence all the time, sanitized. There was nothing sanitized about the murder of George Floyd. It was human, raw, and awful. The violence was right there in front of us. The officer who had his knee on his neck, clearly enjoyed having power over another human. The boldness he displayed, knowing he was on camera, looking up at the people filming and continuing anyway. As I took this in, I knew this video is just one of many acts of violence against minorities, particularly Black men. And I knew I could not look away any longer. Images of the Klan flooded my mind. How, as a country, have we tolerated this? What are we doing? The many protests that erupted in response heartened me, but would it last? How do we make this moment stick? My all-white and mostly all Ivy League, very privileged monthly women's book group went into a flurry of emails and decided immediately to use the next year to only talk about Black Lives Matter and to only read Black authors. But how will this reading list change us? What can I do today and tomorrow and the next day and the day after that? In my perfect bubble of COVID privilege with my toys and my telehealth and my delivered groceries, what am I going to do? An arrow pierced my heart. How am I going to keep my heart open? We've been here before. I was 23 years old in March 1991 when Rodney King was brutally beaten by police in Los Angeles. A bystander, George Halliday, happened to catch this on video and sent footage to a TV station. King was tased and hit with a baton about 55 times. The beating resulted in at least one concussion and a broken cheekbone, which King described on NPR as such. They had to take out my eye, put a metal plate behind it so it wouldn't fall out, and put it back in. In 1993, 3 of the 4 officers accused of excessive force were acquitted. And this, of course, instigated the LA riots. What if that beating had not been captured on film? Today, we have the enormous power of cell phone video capability everywhere, disclosing to white people what the Black community has known all along and been trying to tell us. Racially motivated beatings and murders happen all the time. The premise of Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, makes the case that an idea, an action, or a policy is either racist, that is contributing to a history that regards and treats races as inherently unequal, or it is anti-racist because it is trying to dismantle that history. There's nothing in between. He's right. If there is no in between, then being passive is being racist. When we do nothing, we are contributing to racism. There is no wiggle room here. Sitting at home in my bubble of privilege is racist. Kendi writes about anti-racism taking effort, not just occasionally, but consistently, repeatedly. He explains that no one is not racist. He states that fighting racism is like fighting an addiction. It takes daily effort. Kendi also paraphrases Assata Shakur, an activist from the 70s, the Black Liberation Army, who questioned whether, quote, any group in history has gained their freedom through appealing to the moral conscience of their oppressors. Kendi pushes us instead to focus on policy, because while other approaches may benefit individuals, quote, only policy change helps groups. Aha, here is something concrete we can focus on, policy. We have to accept that policies formed in the past are inherently racist and have to be undone. To consider a few: redlining, discriminatory and predatory bank lending practices, blockbusting, the Southern strategy, mass incarceration. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 finally banned segregation in schools and other places, but did little to remedy the problem of discrimination in voting rights. And of course, the institution of slavery itself was legal. So, what will we do as a community, as a church? Will we reach out to our police chief about brutality against minorities? Will we engage legislators? Will we team up with Indivisible Plymouth, with other churches? Will we form an anti-racism working group? Will we leverage our privilege to influence prison reform? Today is August 16th, 2020. If we look back a year from now, in August 2021, what will we see? I don't know exactly what we will do as a church over the next year, but I do know this. We have to stay engaged. We have to keep our hearts open. As Kendi says, it takes consistent, routine effort over time to fight racism. Right here in Plymouth, we are surrounded by a culture born of British colonialism. The British Empire being the dominant imperialist world power over the last 500 years and counting. My ancestors. Maya Angelou's poem, which I read earlier, states, "Confess you've heard me crying and admit you've seen my tears." We have seen her tears and we cannot look away. I'm also reminded of something local transgender activist Mason Dunn likes to say. My liberation is tied to your liberation. This actually references a statement by an Australian Aboriginal activist named Lilla Watson, who is credited to have said, "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." Amen, and blessed be. And now please join Michael in singing hymn 157.
Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly none, singly none. And by union what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none.
All right, everyone, we are drawing to the close of the recorded part of our service. The benediction today is the last recorded part of the service. The reason for that is that the postlude video that we'll be showing you guys is a copyrighted video, and as we were unable to establish contact with the performers, we didn't want to record a video that was not our own. Today we'll be ending our service with a gorgeous rendition of the song Stand Up from the movie Harriet, about the iconic and revolutionary Harriet Tubman, performed by the Douglas family of Atlanta. I leave you with the following benediction. Go in peace, hope, and justice, by loving and being of service to one another. Amen, and blessed be.